a lot of folks don't know you're an econ professor. And I'm saying that because every time I Google the name of the congressman you're running against, Adam Smith,
Yes.
I am reminded that he shares a name with the Scottish
Yeah,
philosopher
yeah.
Adam Smith.
A couple of people have pointed out on X that, the irony of this hasn't escaped me, a socialist running against a man named Adam Smith.
Adam Smith, the father of capitalism, as a socialist, as an econ professor, he's like the final boss.
I mean, he was one of the classical, authors, and that's where the term neoclassical economics comes. It's sort of harkening back to those ideas that were brought forward by Adam Smith and David Ricardo.
Speaking, yeah, the Scottish philosopher,
Yeah,
not the
yeah.
congressman. Okay, well, school is out. It's time for Sound Politics. I'm Scott Greenstone. It's just me again. Libby Denkman is out sick. But we have a great show this week because I'm not truly alone. Never am I truly alone. I have you, the listeners, and I also have my guest this week, who I will get to in a moment. But first, let's talk about a Seattle area congressman. For at least 8 years, Democrat Congressman Adam Smith, who represents South Seattle, Bellevue, down to Federal Way, has been a target for lefty Democrats and socialists in the Seattle area who've been trying to topple him, kind of pull an Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and knock him out of his seat from the left. Because Smith is a fierce critic of the progressive left wing of the party. He's been saying that the party is being led into a ditch by, among others, Seattle progressives using words like cis-heteropatriarchy. His challengers from the left wing have always fallen way short. They've never even gotten close. I don't think any of them have even gotten half of his vote count. But none of them was as well known or as far to his left as former Seattle City Council member Kshama SaWant, who announced she's running this week for Adam Smith's congressional seat. So SaWant spent a decade on the Seattle City Council and helped push the $15 minimum wage, built a divisive reputation, never lost an election, but had some close calls. Now, while Seattle has plenty of Democratic socialists, SaWant was its first elected socialist who is not part of the Democratic Party, or at least in the modern era. She's running for Congress as an independent. Kshama SaWant joins me now. Hi.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, so first, elevator pitch to someone who's never heard of you. Why are you running for Congress?
We are seeing a Holocaust unfolding in front of our eyes, the Holocaust of the 21st century, which is the genocide in Gaza. The president of the International Committee of the Red Cross just visited Gaza and said that it has been transformed into hell on earth. We have an unfolding famine in Gaza with over 2 million people at risk of famine, and 9,000 children have already been treated for malnutrition this year. All of this horror has been bought and paid for by Adam Smith and the two warmongering parties, the Democrats and Republicans, who have backed this genocide, as I said, this Holocaust of the 21st century to the hilt, because the Israeli state could not have done any of it without the tens of billions of dollars in aid from the U.S. ruling class. Adam Smith, far from being a foot soldier, has been one of the major war hawks as a prominent member of the House Armed Services Committee and as a prominent cheerleader of war, not only of Gaza. His almost 3-decade record in Congress is littered with wars that he has supported. Adam Smith has never met a war he did not like. He has supported the wars in Kosovo, Afghanistan, Iraq, Libya, Syria, Yemen, and the current bloody inter-imperialist proxy war in Ukraine. Adam Smith has the blood of over 400,000 people who have been killed in Gaza on his hands. And for years, for decades, he has been bankrolled by the weapons industry profiteers such as Lockheed Martin and Raytheon. And right now, and even last year and years before, he's being bankrolled by some of the same people who support Donald Trump. For example, Elon Musk's SpaceX has donated to his campaign not just once or twice, but every election cycle since 2010. He's also being bankrolled by Palantir CEO Alexander Karp, who has also been part of the development of ICE and the extremely repressive apparatus against immigrant people. And not only all of that, if that wasn't enough, Adam Smith has also been a loyal strategist and supporter for Wall Street interests. He supported the bailout of big banks in 2008 when ordinary working people, not to mention millions of homeowners, were facing foreclosure. Ordinary people were sold out while big banks were bailed out. Then under Obama, he also
Now,
supported
Kshama,
continuing
I
those
want to,
bailouts.
but before we move on, I do want to stay on the Israel and Gaza issue for a second, well, I do want to talk more about his record and your issues with it. But let me just stay on Israel and Gaza before we move on. You said 400,000. I think that's an estimate. The Gaza Health Ministry says about 52,000 last time I checked. And Congressman Smith, he has supported Israel, he says, right to defend itself. He's criticized Israeli strategy and pushed to get humanitarian aid into Gaza. He has resisted calls to cut military funding to Israel. But like you said, or actually, I'm not sure if you mentioned this, but one of his biggest donors is, according to Open Secrets, maybe his biggest donor, the pro-Israel lobbying group AIPAC.
It
I,
is. APAC was not. It's not a doubt. The records
yeah, it's
indicate. I mean,
number,
these are public
yeah.
records. APAC was his largest donor, and in fact, if you count up all the donations he has got from the Zionist lobby overall, it's not just APAC. He has received nearly $500,000 at this point in time. Let's just be clear. Let's draw a historical marker here.
Hmm.
At this point in time, for anybody, let alone somebody like Adam Smith, who has the power to stop the genocide, but instead he has refused to do so. And in fact, he has cheerled the genocide in Israel by supporting the tens of billions of dollars that have gone, because without those dollars, Israel cannot carry out the genocide. So it's not an idle reference. The reference to the dollars and the votes on those dollars are not a side point. They are the central issue, because without that, that is the backbone of the Israeli regime's genocide. And at this point, for anybody, let alone somebody who has power to stop the genocide, to talk about Israel's need to defend itself is a form of genocide denial. Let's be very clear. That's what's going on here.
Well, I want to bring this home to the district, Seattle, Bellevue, down to Federal Way. I'd wonder if this is an issue that resonates with voters here, because last year, Democrat Melissa Chaudhry challenged Smith largely on a pro-Palestinian platform, and she did not even get half the votes that he did. And, socialists, Democratic socialists who challenged him in the years before that did even worse. One didn't even make it out of the primary. Do you think you have a better chance?
Well, first of all, let me just point out, as you yourself said in your introduction, that I have never lost an election. And, the record of the media is very poor on these predictions as far as my elections are concerned, because even before I launched an election, the media was ready to write my political obituary. They've done that every single time.
I
Obviously,
do
it would be foolish.
remember in
It would be
2019 sitting and watching, the night of election. I think you were many points down, and then and you were declared, politically.
Oh,
They wrote
yeah,
your political
of
obituary, and you
course.
came back and swung, which is a reminder to me to never announce the results of election on election night. They all have to be counted. But sorry, I'll
No,
let you
no, no,
finish.
no. I appreciate you saying that. And in fact, in the start of the recall fight, remember there was a recall attempt against
Yes, yeah.
me. And as soon as that recall was launched, I could almost see the Chamber of Commerce breaking and the Democratic Party breaking out the champagne, and then the Seattle Times and most of the media had written me off, saying that there's no chance that she was going to win. And yet it was not just my victory. Obviously, the reason I won all those elections was because the agenda that I am fighting for completely and utterly resonated with the vast majority of people. Now, if you pose the question, is everybody in the ninth congressional district going to agree with your agenda? Of course not. But I don't pretend, unlike all the other politicians, I don't pretend to represent in a class neutral way. I am openly a socialist and a working class representative. If you look at free healthcare for all by taxing the rich, which is one of the demands that I'm going to be campaigning on in this congressional election, the opinion is very divided based on class. So all the CEOs and billionaires of Wall Street who are profiting from denying healthcare to ordinary people, millions of people, the companies like United Healthcare, Humana, Cigna, the people who are vested in those companies, they're not going to agree with my agenda, and that is exactly why they are donating to Adam Smith, and and they're going to be opposing my campaign in a very big way. We are very clear the kind of powerful and wealthy interests that we are up against. So these are not neutral questions.
You split recently from your longtime party, Socialist Alternative, over what a Seattle Times columnist called grievances, rivalries, refusal to compromise. But I'm not so curious about that. I'm more curious about why you think, with some of the popular sort of populist things that you say, poll well, why can't leftists build a winning coalition? And how are you going to, in a district where 27% of people voted for Trump and only 5% voted third party last year?
Well, first of all, if you look at the evidence from my 10 years on the city council, it would be patently absurd to say that myself and the socialists I that who work with me and Workers Strike Back, my activist organization, that we don't know how to build coalitions. Because if we had not known how to build coalitions, we would have won nothing. And in fact, my record on the city council is extremely unusual because I used a fundamentally different approach than the Democratic Party. And in fact, even a lot of people who might run as independents but then end up, quote unquote, caucusing with the Democratic Party. I instead used my office to build political movements, and building political movements of the working class on a broad basis absolutely requires building coalitions because people are going to have disagreements on this or that issue. The question is, can we provide leadership on the substantive questions of the day in order to win historic victories for working people while we are at the same time being honest about disagreements? That is the basis on which we won $15 an hour, not because everybody agreed with everything that I was saying, but because they agreed that the minimum wage was abysmally low. And in fact, it was the power of that coalition building through which we were able to win not just $15 an hour. Keep in mind, we kept at bay many, many destructive amendments that were brought forward by the same Democrats who were then forced to vote yes on the $15 bill. One of the amendments they tried to bring forward was not allowing inflation increases. We won that extremely important amendment. And at that time, because of that, today Seattle's minimum wage is $20.76, which is the highest in the nation. So that's
Mm.
how, if you, I don't use the words coalition building, I talk about movement building, but whatever terms you want to use, that is how you do it. And the predominantly important question here, Scott, is, do you understand whom you should build a coalition with? And that is where most of the left has failed, because most of
Hmm.
the labor leadership, most of the NGO leadership, most of the people who run for elected office with good intentions, well-meaning ideas and all of that, the fatal mistake that they make is that they think that this word, quote unquote, coalition means you have to kowtow to the Democratic Party's agenda. You have to make agreements with big business and, quote unquote, compromise. No, that is not how you win any victories. The way you win victories is by building defiant struggle through mobilizing working people. That's the coalition union. You build working class solidarity, not try to build backrooms unity with the Chamber of Commerce.
Hmm. I, it's interesting, to talk about the Democrats and kowtowing or, or working with them. Yeah, I last time I saw you in Seattle, I was covering an event that you did with Green Party candidate Jill Stein, and that's where you said Democrat Kamala Harris deserves to lose 1,000 times over in last November's election. And I asked because 68% of this district did vote for Harris, whereas only 1% voted for Stein. And you admitted at the rally, I think, if I remember right, that you didn't expect Stein to win. It was a move to punish Harris. And the left-leaning Harris voter argument against that was, okay, we're not crazy about Harris, but we can't have an authoritarian, being President Trump, in the White House. That's their argument. I wonder if would you act differently looking back? Do you regret that move now? Do you agree with arguments that Trump is dismantling the constitutional republic?
I am on record having warned working people nationally that Trump is no friend of the working class. I also said that Trump is, if he gets elected, he will double down on the genocide, that he will attack working people. And I also said at the same time that the reason he is able to pose, falsely, he's a con man, Trump is a con man. The reason he's able to falsely pose as a friend of working people, as somebody who was going to address the genocide, is precisely because Kamala Harris and before that Joe Biden were both correctly seen as warmongers. I mean, the genocide started with Biden's okay. Biden presided on tens of billions of dollars being given to this genocide, and the Democratic Party was in power when this happened. And so the Democrats like Adam Smith and President Joe Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris, they are the ones who have blood on their hands. And people rejected that. Our slogan, my slogan, Workers Strike Back slogan, last year was no votes for genocide. And that was absolutely correct. Like I said, the genocide is not a line that I will ever cross. And we opposed every vote for both Trump and Harris. We said that Harris needed to end her support for the genocide, and if she didn't, she would lose, and she did. And the loss that she faced is at her doorstep and at the doorstep of the Democratic Party. You don't have to take my word for it. Democratic Party strategists and political pundits are telling you, openly admitting our party is in crisis, except that they're drawing the exact wrong conclusions. The Democratic Party's approval ratings are at a 30-year low. They are in the toilet. They know they're in crisis. You know they're in crisis. Let's not act like this doesn't exist. It's the truth. But the conclusion of why they're in crisis, that's where a lot of lies are said. I mean, look at Adam Smith. He has attacked people on the left saying, oh, the Democratic Party is suffering because he said its brand is broken. I mean, he's right. The brand is broken. But the reason it's broken is because the Democratic Party has lurched to the right, not just today, not just 5 years ago, but for over 3 decades. In fact, Adam Smith has been in office, let's not forget, for nearly 3 decades. And during that time, the Democratic Party, and he was part of leading this lurch to the right, the Democratic Party has moved to the right further and further. And that's what has opened up the space for right-wing populism and for Trumpism to grow. And if we want to end Trumpism, which I absolutely want to do, we want to defeat Trumpism and right-wing populism. But the way to do it is not to give a rubber stamp to the Democratic Party, which is really trying to out-Trump Trump. I mean, if you look at Harris, the reason she lost was because she was trying to out-Trump Trump rather than actually offer something for working people, something for the anti-war movement. The Democratic Party has sold the working people out. I mean, they broke the railroad workers' strike. Adam Smith was one of the people who did that. They have carried out massive budgets cuts against programs that working and poor people rely on.
The Biden decision not to let railroad workers go on strike to change the rules around striking. I want to, you're talking about maybe more.
Let's not forget a huge part of the anger among working people at the Democratic Party is over healthcare.
Yeah,
that is why my campaign is calling for free healthcare for all by taxing the rich.
That's helpful. I'm having flashbacks right now talking about the Democrats to your time toward the end of your time on the Seattle City Council when you were also criticizing progressive Democrats like Pramila Jayapal and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. You're a former council member, Nick Licata, who once lived in a commune, so he has some leftist cred, maybe. I don't know how much in leftist circles, but he praised your work on the minimum wage. But he told KUOW that you would have been more effective at getting progressive legislation passed by compromising more and attacking your colleagues less. And I want to like zoom forward to 2027 January and think about, say you win over those very comfortable margins that Congressman Smith has, which again are they're usually over 60%. If you manage to succeed where Republicans, Democrats, socialists have failed and unseat Adam Smith, would you work with Democrats or Republicans on any specific policies in Congress? I'm thinking about Bernie Sanders said he would work with Trump on credit card debt, things like that. Are there any policies like that you would work with Republicans or Democrats on?
Well, I'm very clear about the agenda I am fighting for, which is against the genocide and for working class people to win substantive victories. Whoever is willing to fight alongside me for working class people, and at this point, of course, against the genocide, they are welcome. But it's a question of which way it goes. I am not going to compromise what I am fighting for in order to caucus with the Democrats. And let's be clear, it's often hard for people to understand what is going on in the halls of power because the vast majority of people aren't there. And so the way Nick Licata described, I mean, I worked with Nick Licata and Mike O'Brien a lot. I mean,
This is
they
on
supported
Seattle City
me
Council.
in the renters' rights and other workers' rights that I was fighting on. So it's not that, oh, we don't want cordial relationships with people who support us. We absolutely do. Otherwise, how would we build such almighty movements? I mean, come on, it's such an absurd idea to bring up that, oh, you're not nice to people or you're not building coalitions. If I didn't know how to build coalitions or how to be nice, then the logic would be that I have won all these historic victories just on my own merit, like just as one person. I mean, that just attributes superhuman powers. That's not how victories are won for working class people. Victories are won by building the morale of working people and organizing them effectively in a collective leadership. And I'll tell you this, it is fatal. It has been fatal for working class people as soon as the squad members, especially AOC, decided that their job was to make peace with Nancy Pelosi, make peace with Chuck Schumer.
This is the
go
Progressive
to the DNC
Squad, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez.
Completely lie by saying
some other
that Kamala Harris was working tirelessly to end for a ceasefire. I mean, it's great for AOC's career. It's great for her life. That's the reality. When you become an elected official, it is good for your own peace of mind to not make powerful enemies because they will make your life hell. So if you want to actually fight for working class people, yes, they will make your own life hell. You will have to fight back in every which way. In this campaign against Adam Smith, I fully expect AIPAC, the Zionist lobby, corporate landlords, the health insurance industry, big pharma, Wall Street, all of them, and not to mention many of the Democratic Party leaders, unfortunately, even probably some of the labor leaders, all of these forces will be arrayed against us. But there is no struggle if we don't accept that that is what we have to fight. I don't have a guarantee that we will win. I have never lied to working people saying in the beginning of any struggle or any campaign that, oh, don't worry, we're going to win. No, instead, we are doing the opposite. We are warning working people that we are up against a powerful set of enemies, extremely rich and powerful people. And so if we want to win, then we will need to fight back. We will need to create an army of thousands. And by creating that army of hundreds upon hundreds is how we won any victory in City Hall. That's how you win victories, by bringing the power of ordinary people.
Kshama SaWant is a former Seattle City Council member and a candidate for Washington's 9th Congressional District. We have also, of course, reached out to incumbent Congressman Adam Smith to respond to SaWant and just talk generally about how he's, ticked off at the left or leading, how they're leading the Democrats into a ditch. So he will be on the show soon. That is it for Sound Politics today. If you have a question about something you heard, or you have a question for Congressman Smith, or you just have a general quandary, a general query that we could help you with or answer with you, email us at soundpolitics@KUOW.org. Again, that's soundpolitics@KUOW.org. That is it for Sound Politics. Our show is produced by Hans Anderson, who called himself the Puppet Master this morning as we were about to tape, and it's true. I don't do anything without his say so. Our editor this week, the other puppet master behind me, is Kat Smith. I'm KUOW politics reporter Scott Greenstone, a puppet, and this show is only possible because of your support. So I hope you'll consider a donation to keep us going at KUOW.org/politics. And I would like to specifically thank Matt, who donated this week. Thank you so much, Matt. We'll see you next time. Bye.